Right, we're in the 45th chapter of the book of Ezekiel. Getting in verse 1, actually, we've been walking through the prophetic vision of the prophet of the third temple. Okay? Or fourth temple, depending upon how you interpret it. I think it's the third. That's my personal opinion. We've talked about a little bit about of why in past messages. It's an interesting study in and of itself. Regardless of how you interpret it, this is the last temple. Whether you believe there will be two more, one built by men in the last days and then of this age, and then one built for the kingdom, or whether you believe there will be one built in the last days of this age that will still be standing in the kingdom. Verse 1 says, "When you allot the land as an inheritance, you shall set aside from the land as a gift sacred to Yehovah an area 25,000 cubits long and 10,000 wide." Yarden, can you give me some measurements on that? 62,500. So 62,500 feet long and 25,000 feet wide. Okay. Now, that seems like a large piece of land, but I want you to think about something. So many mainline teachers want to tell us that this is just an illusion. Okay? That is a literary allusion to something else that is going to happen, that there's not going to be another temple, or there's not going to be a temple in the age to come. That this is not a literal thing. That's a lot of the same people who like to say that, the waters didn't literally part, or Messiah didn't literally die and rise again. Okay, and then they say he's going to come back, but not literally, only spiritually. And then they say that this is a spiritual thing. If it's a spiritual thing, we don't need land to stand it on. If it's a spiritual thing, it doesn't just say it would take up this much space if it was there. It says, Beit Yisrael, set apart a piece of land this big so that we can build this temple. Why would he tell us to set aside a piece of land with specific dimensions if he wasn't going to literally use it? It says, the length and the width, it says, this shall be holy through its entire extent. Everything within that boundary is sacred and set apart. Of this, a square measuring a full 500 by 500, again, that's cubits, shall be reserved for the sanctuary, and 50 cubits for an open space all around it. What's 500 cubits? 1,250 feet square, and 125 feet wide on each side, so that's for the space around it. Of the aforesaid area you shall measure off as most holy, most sanctified, and destined to include the sanctuary, a space 25,000 feet long by 10,000 feet wide. That's 62,500. It is a sacred portion of the land. It shall provide space for houses for the priests, the ministrants of the sanctuary who are qualified to minister to Yehovah, as well as set apart or holy ground for the sanctuary. Another space, 25,000 feet by 10,000 feet wide. You notice we've had 3 of those so far, all the same size. shall be the property of the Levites, the servants of the temple. 20 chambers alongside the sacred or set apart reserve. You shall set aside a space 25,000 feet long by 5,000 wide as the property of the city. You notice something there? It's the same length but only half the width. We talk about, isn't it a sad thing? And I fall into this pit too, this thinking, isn't it a sad thing that we finally have Jerusalem, or most of it, but we can't get the Temple Mount? If you pay attention to this, the Temple Mount is supposed to be bigger than what's guaranteed to us for the city. Think about that. In the time to come, the temple is going to sit on a piece of land that takes up more space than the entire city was supposed to have been, or guaranteed to be. And the prince shall belong, and to the prince shall belong on both sides of the sacred reserve and the property of the city, and alongside the sacred reserve and the property of the city, on the west extending westward and on the east extending eastward, a portion corresponding to one of the tribal portions that extend from the western border to the eastern border of the land. So the king, the prince, who I've told you in past messages, I think is David Hamelech. Will own a piece of land on each side of the city, the size of a tribal portion. That shall be his property in Yisrael, and my princes shall no more defraud my people, but shall leave the rest of the land to the several tribes of Beit Yisrael. Now think about that. He says they shall no more defraud the people. That means that he had watched them defraud the people. He had watched them take what was not theirs to take. And if you remember, when the people demanded, when Beit Yisrael demanded, give us a king like the kings of the countries around us, he gave them one. They didn't much like him. They gave him another. He gave them another. They loved him. But you know what? They both took things that they weren't supposed to take. And it just went on from there. It got worse and worse. But he says, so that they never have an excuse to take what isn't theirs. You're going to give them on each side of the city a piece of land equal to the apportionment of an entire tribe. And if that's not enough for them, let's be honest, something's wrong. Thus said Yehovah Elohim, enough, princes of Israel, make an end of lawlessness and rapine, and do what is right and just. Put a stop to your evictions of my people, declares Yehovah Elohim. So apparently they had gone out and taken the land of the people and kicked them out. He said, this is mine now. Have honest balances, an honest ephah and an honest bath. The ephah and the bath shall comprise the same volume, the bath a tenth of a homer, and the ephah a tenth of a homer. Their capacity shall be gauged by the homer. In other words, not by your own desires. And the shekel shall weigh 10 gerahs, 20 shekels, 25 shekels, and 10 plus 5 shekels shall count with you as a mina. He's saying this isn't hard. This is basic mathematics. How many ounces are in a pound? How many quarts are in a gallon? We all know these things. We learned them in school. But does it strike you that sometimes the government, even today, likes to use one measurement for us and another for them? Happens all the time, doesn't it? Okay? And he was saying that's wrong. It's unjust. He says, stop that. I made you kings and princes over Israel. I took it away from you. And if you want it back, you have to follow these rules. What is good for the people is good for the king, and what is good for the king is good for the people. This is the contribution you shall make. Remember, he's still talking to the king. 1/6 of an ephah from every homer of wheat, and 1/6 of an ephah from every homer of barley, while the dew from the oil being measured by the bath, shall be 1/10 of a bath from every core. As 10 baths make a homer, so 10 baths make a homer. And the dew from the flock shall be 1 animal in every 200. All these shall be contributed from Israel's products for meal offerings, burnt offerings, and offerings of well-being, to make expiation for them, declares Yehovah Elohim. In this contribution, the entire population must join with the prince of Israel. Okay? But the burnt offerings, the meal offerings, and the libations on festivals, new moons, Sabbaths, all fixed occasions of Beit Israel shall be the obligation of the prince. You hear that? So in all of those things that he listed first, everyone of the people is supposed to contribute to that. Everyone. But in the latter things, it's the responsibility of the prince. You know what this tells me? This tells me that because the princes of Israel had greater things than the people of Israel, therefore the princes of Israel were required to give greater things. What did Mashiach say? It says, if you have, much will be expected from you. If you have not, what did he say? The 2 coins were a greater gift, a greater giving, a greater contribution than all the wealth of the rich people, because it was all she had. This is that principle. He, meaning the prince, shall provide the sin offerings, the meal offerings, the burnt offerings, and the offerings of well-being to make expiation for Beit Israel. Remember in the earlier teaching, I was talking about Abimelech, and even though he was not a righteous man, although he did not know the Creator, he said the things that Abraham should have been saying. He realized that anything he did wrong, there would be ramifications in his kingdom. This is that principle. When a person is in a leadership position, I don't care if you're the dad, the husband, the big brother, the supervisor, the property owner. When a person is in a place of authority, there is a responsibility. I remember my grandfather. My grandfather taught me so much about leadership. This is my father's father. He's an old Navy man. And he told me one time, probably told me many times, I remember distinctly one time, when he put me in charge of some stuff that me and my cousins were supposed to do, and I didn't get it done. And I gave him excuses, and, this one didn't listen to me, and that one went and did his own thing. And he said, boy, you know right now, when you're in charge, if anyone under you screws up, you screwed up by letting them screw up. Now, my grandfather was not an observant Jew. He was ethnically Jewish, but he was not an observant Jew by any means. But he understood this principle, that when you're a leader, greater things are expected, not less. The leader should hold him or herself to a higher standard, not a lower one. If you expect it of the people below you, you should expect it of yourself and then some. Thus said Yehovah Elohim, on the first day of the first month, we just passed that, you shall take a bull of the herd without blemish, and you shall cleanse the sanctuary. The priest shall take some of the blood of the sin offering and apply it to the doorposts of the temple, to the four corners of the ledge of the altar and to the doorposts of the gate of the inner court. You shall do the same on the 7th day of the month to purge the temple from uncleanness caused by unwitting or ignorant persons. Think about that. The first day of the first month, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do a Yom Kippur. It's not a holy day. But we're going to do a Yom Kippur type of thing for people who don't know they've screwed up. Think about that. Yom Kippur is for making right the things that we know we did wrong. The first day of Aviv is about being cleansed from the things we don't even realize we've done wrong. People tell me there wasn't grace when this was written. Anybody see grace there? I give you an opportunity to make right on the things you know are wrong, and I give you an opportunity to make right on the things you don't even know are wrong. On the 14th day of the first month, you shall have the Passover sacrifice, and during a festival of 7 days, unleavened bread shall be eaten. On that day, the prince shall provide a bull of sin offering on behalf of himself and of the entire population. And during the 7 days of the festival, he shall provide daily for 7 days 7 bulls and 7 rams without blemish for a burnt offering to Yehovah, and 1 goat daily for a sin offering. He shall provide a meal offering of an ephah for each bull and an ephah for each man, with a hin of oil to every ephah. So too, during the festival of the 7th month for 7 days, from the 15th day on, he shall provide the same sin offering, burnt offerings, and meal offerings, and oil. And you know what? I don't ever want to be a prince of Israel. You know, we think about kings and princes in the world today. People in those positions are wealthy. A king or prince of Israel, if he's truly holding his office in high esteem and doing what he's supposed to do, will give and give and give and give for the benefit of the people. I don't see that today. I don't even see that in Messianic congregations for the most part today. You know, a prophecy that says that when Beit Israel keeps the Sabbath and holds fast to Torah, the kingdom will come. And my question then is, how far are we? I say it could happen any day. They could lay the cornerstone. They've got the cornerstone. Any day they could take back the Temple Mount, and they could start transferring everything from Ethiopia to Israel. Start building the temple. What if the reason that hasn't happened is because we're not following these most basic principles? What if it's because we're not honoring the leaders above us? And what if we're not honoring them because they aren't keeping Torah? And what if what matters isn't whether or not they're keeping Torah from our perspective, but whether or not we're honoring them? What if what it takes for us to have leaders who honor Torah is for us to honor them because of Torah? Something I challenge you all to pray about. Do we have a midrash? There was a hand up. Yes.
Why did they sacrifice bulls, rams, but not chickens?
Because, you know what? That's a good question. There is no place in Scripture that says to sacrifice a chicken. That's a different religion. Okay. Well, it might be that religion does chickens because it's contrary to Torah. I don't know, but yeah, there's a religion, at least one out there that does that. So probably more than one. Malik is shaking his head at more than one, so I'm sure he's researched that. All of the Now, chickens are clean, they're kosher, but all of the animals that are supposed to be sacrificed, of all of them, there was never a chicken. I think the only birds were like doves, maybe. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think.
There was some.
Yeah. Yes. Quail? I don't think there was ever a sacrifice of quail. Now, there were quail that flew in mass numbers so that the children of Israel could eat them in the wilderness, but that wasn't a sacrifice, that was a gift from Elohim. Anybody?
I couldn't say anything because I can't really remember. One of the sacrifices that Mary Joseph gave, that was for the poor people who couldn't afford the land.
Right, that's when the small birds are allowed to be given, were allowed to be given in the temple. It was strictly because the people were too poor to do the type of that. It's kind of like we're supposed to have a lamb for Passover, for Pesach, and if we can't, but we can get a kid of a goat, okay, then we can use that instead. And so it's a what he wants is this, but he'll allow this if we can't provide it. That's what he just said. Anybody else? Yes?
Well, I think you're right about, you're definitely right about the, honoring, you have to respect the authority that's above you, bosses and stuff, even in the world. I mean, and it's hard to do, really hard to do when you have very worldly bosses. But, then again, that goes back to, like Abimelech, was a worldly king, and Abraham had just tried to share some truth with him. Maybe he would come into covenant. Maybe some of these worldly authorities would be come into covenant more if we would. Not saying that throw it all in there at once, but I'm just saying live by example. If they ask, then tell them.
And more as I study on the topic of biblical leadership, I see that he commands us to follow those over us. He commands us to treat those under us in a certain way. But he doesn't say if the other person isn't keeping their part, don't keep yours. You know what I'm saying? I think it's too easy and we fall into it. I've been guilty before. Okay? Supervisor behaving badly. I just get sick of it and just do my own thing. It's not what I'm commanded to do.
You feel like you're the only one doing your job and everybody else around you just let everything go, so you just start to not care and let go. We're not supposed to do that.
Nope, supposed to do the opposite.
Easy trap to fall into. Very easy. There's something else too. That's all I can think of right now. I'm glad I'm not a prince too, because there's a lot of stuff.
I'm kind of scared just knowing I'm from the right tribe.
The thing I was thinking about that is, part of the reason that people were so poor, if you go in, like the kings of Israel, and I think Judah too, but just talking about Israel, but probably a lot more Israel, they were going to take their land there. If you take everybody's land, you take all their livelihood, they're gonna be poor. I mean, that's not their fault that they're poor, because they went in. It wasn't their fault. And a lot of people nowadays, they want to blame it. They say, well, and some people it is true they're poor because they became slave to lenders. But some people are poor through no fault of their own, and yet people look down and say, well, you're poor because this is your fault, or this is your sin, or this is your father's sin, or your grandfather's sin, and that's why you're poor, and it's just not biblical at all.
Well, it can be, but not, I don't think it's, I think usually what you're saying is right, that
Right.
it's just that there's, something happened and they're poor.
Right.
But I mean, I do believe that the whole, if you don't obey the commandments, you're generationally cursed for 3 to 4 generations. I've seen it in my own family. Okay? But I also believe that there are people who are just in a bad place in life, and just need a little help. Anybody else?
Maybe in the renewed earth and the new kingdom, they'll be one of the first.
Because they're the least.
Last.